Assalamu alaikum. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa barak ala Sayyidina Muhammadin khayr al-awwaleen wal akhirin wa ala alihi wa sahabatihi ajma'een. Allahumma alimna ma yanfa'ana wa manfa'na bima 'allamtana wa zidna ilma. Allahumma zidna wa la tunqusna wa akrimna wa la tuhinna wa atina wa la tahrimna wa athirna wa la tu'thir 'alayna warda 'anna wa 'amdina ya Rabbil Alameen. ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. And welcome to lesson 5 in the study of Surah Yusuf, the 12th surah of the Quran, surah that was revealed in Mecca. And what is interesting about, of course, one small interesting fact about the surah is that it is the 12th in the order or arrangement of the surahs of the Quran, and the story revolves around the 12 brothers of Yusuf, or Yusuf and his 11 brothers. Now, he's covered quite a bit, and today we wanted to move into another part of the story. Now, we've come to know that Yusuf alayhi salam, that he himself, that now he's out of prison, that he's been free from the prison. But before being free from the prison, he demands, or at least he sends a request and suggests to the king that he should look into the matter of the woman who cut their hands. Now, interestingly, he didn't mention the wife of the Aziz in that particular inquiry. And when I say the reason he didn't mention her was because he wanted to sort of conceal her identity and indicate to her that he didn't hold a grudge against her. So eventually an investigation ensues. The king, he approaches the woman, and then they confess that Yusuf was innocent of all these things, and despite his long sentence, they themselves were the ones who falsely accused him of this crime. So he comes out of the prison, and the king himself wants to help Yusuf to be redeemed. So alhamdulillah, he has his reputation back and his freedom. You know, it will be one thing to have his freedom back only, but suffer the misfortune of not being considered innocent in the eyes of the public. But Yusuf himself, alayhi salam, being a prophet who knew that he had a greater mission coming out of the prison, he wanted to ensure that he was known publicly to be a person of amana, and so he hesitated, and he told him, "Okay, well, find out or do an investigation and make it be known that I am falsely accused, and so when I come out, people should not entertain any doubts about my innocence." So he comes out. The king offers him a position, being that he was dealt a great injustice. And of course, we already talked about the injustice done to him by his brothers. But now the king is a fair king, so he says, "Okay, I'll give you a position. That you are that today that you are in a special position, and you are a trustee, a trustworthy individual, a person in a position of safety." And so Yusuf responds, "To place me over the storehouses of the earth. So place me over the storehouses of the earth, because he's Hafidun Alim, that he is a good protector, and who knows well how to manage such things." So naturally, spending years in slavery and servitude in the home of the Aziz, of course, gave him a certain amount of experience. So now Yusuf himself is the Aziz. He's made to be the Aziz, and the former Aziz, according to the books of Tafsir, Allah knows best about exactly what happened historically, but according to the reports in Tafsir, the old Aziz was removed from his post, and then Yusuf removed from his post. And then later he died. And once he died, according to some narrations of the story, Yusuf marries the ex-wife of the Aziz, the same woman who actually sought to seduce him, and then birthed for him 2 children. And it turned out, according to this particular opinion, that she herself had not consummated her marriage with the former Aziz because of some issues with the Aziz, in particular with regard to the version of the story that says that the reason that the Aziz himself did not punish his wife, who was not really that upset, was because he himself was an individual who was qalil al-ghayra, that he lacked a certain type of jealousy that husbands generally have for their wives, or because he was extremely tolerant or forbearant person himself, or it was because he realized that Yusuf, in his beauty, and his wife being, in the presence of Yusuf day in and day out, and posed a significant challenge for him. Therefore, he forgave her. But according to the opinion that says that he himself, that he just simply didn't care that much about what happened and what she did. According to that opinion, he himself was not intimate with his wife, or his former wife now, according to that viewpoint. And so Yusuf himself actually found her to be a virgin when they actually married upon the death of the former Aziz. Allah knows best. But that's in narration. I just want to bring it to your attention that it does exist, something along those lines. So Yusuf is now the Aziz. And so as predicted or as foreseen by the dream of the Aziz had saw what Yusuf interpreted as 7 harsh years coming, followed by 7 good years coming, followed by 7 harsh years. And during those 7 years, Yusuf had instructed him that what you should do is take a certain percentage of the yield of the crops, of the harvest itself, leave them in their spades and leave them in their containers, their natural containers, and then store them away, right, for the coming hard 7 years, or harsh 7 years. All right, so these harsh years eventually had come. Yusuf's now the Aziz. These years have come, and then this not only affects Egypt, but it affects the surrounding areas, surrounding territories, including, of course, the Sham, the Levant, and the area known as Canaan, where Yusuf and his brothers, his father, Yaqub alayhi salam, he had originated from. So people themselves had a dearth of grain. They did not have access to grains. But they heard about the fact that in Egypt, there was a new Aziz in Egypt, and this Aziz himself had come up with a very good way to help people to fulfill their needs. And so his fundamental deal was that anyone who comes into Egypt and is seeking to buy grain, that we will sell you the grain or barter with you with whatever you bring to us. But each man had a limit of 1 camel's load, or some narrations, the load of 1 donkey. So fundamentally, his brothers, they arrive, as we've learned, they arrive in Egypt, and this is a review of what we covered last week towards the end. So then Joseph's brothers came and entered his presence. He recognized them, but they did not know him. And as mentioned before, this itself was a fulfillment of the promise that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had given to Yusuf when he was in the well. That you're going to inform them of this, that they had done to you while they themselves do not even perceive. So this is the start of that. So he and when he had provided them with their supplies, he said, "Bring me a brother of yours from the same father. Don't you see that I give full measure, and I am best of hosts?" And so again, as mentioned before, according to the biblical story, the reason or the way that Yusuf alayhi salam had come to know that they had an additional brother was because he accused them of being spies because of their large numbers, their size, their beauty, etc. They come there and they, as a small detachment or on a reconnaissance mission, that he accuses them of this. And this is part of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had guided him to do to them, instructed them to do to them. And they rejected and denied it all. And so, but they said, "Okay, well, who are you? Where you come from?" So every question he asked them, it led him to discover that, and of course he already knew, but he led him to discover that they had, of course, an ailing father and mother. Of course, the ailing father, and of course the mother of Yusuf was still alive, and that they had a youngest brother who was the full-blooded brother of Yusuf himself. And so they said, "Okay, next year when you come back next year, you have to bring your brother. If you don't bring your brother, you're not going to get anything from me, and you're not going to come close to me either, right? So that was his statement to them. So they returned to their father. Naturally, of course, they're bothered by this. But before leaving, Yusuf had instructed his servants or his slaves to return the commodities or goods that they had brought with them and put them inside of their saddlebags, right? And لَعَلَّهُمْ يَعْرِفُونَهَا إِذَا انقَلَبُوا إِلَىٰ أَهْلِهِمْ لَعَلَّهُمْ يَرْجِعُونَ. So that they may recognize them once they return to their family, and chance that they might come back, right? In other words, it has multiple things I said about this, like why, right? What does it mean that, and perhaps they'll come back, why they would come back? Would they come back because they're fearful that he might punish them because they didn't pay him the money that for the goods that he gave to them? Or was it because he wanted to ensure that they had enough of provision so they can return the following year, et cetera, et cetera? So there are multiple statements or interpretations that do exist about exactly why this was, right? But fundamentally, there was, of course, a reason, and Yusuf, he believed that by doing this, it was going to be a cause of their return to them. And one of those interpretations is that by sending along with them the same goods or money that they utilized to pay for those goods, that was a sign of goodwill on the part of Yusuf, because his condition was that, well, when you return the next time, you have to make sure you bring your brother with you, right? And so once they get home, they open up their bags and they discover, here are goods that have been returned to us, the same ones that we were bartered with Yusuf or with the king, with the Aziz, in order to receive the goods that we now have. So fundamentally, Yusuf alayhi salam, with the understanding is that he voluntarily returned this to them, and there was not a problem for them to keep their money. Then it was doing it. It's a message to send to their father, even Yaqub alayhi salam, that if they return and when they return the following year, that there's no reason for him to fear that he's going to be done harm by the Aziz, right? That's again another interpretation. فلما رجعوا إلى أبيهم قالوا يا أبانا منع منا الكيل فأرسل معنا أخانا نكتل وإنا له لحافظون قال هل آمنكم عليه إلا كما أمنتم على أخيه من قبل فالله خير حافظا وأرحم الراحمين ولما فتحوا متاعهم وجدوا بضاعتهم ردت إليهم قالوا يا أبانا ما نبغي هذه بضاعتنا ردت إلينا ونمير أهلنا ونحفظ أخانا ونزداد كيل بعير. So when they returned to their father, they said, Father, the allotment has been refused us. Send our brother with us, and we will receive an allotment. We will take care of him. He said, shall I trust you with him when it will only turn out like when I trusted you with his brother before? God is the best protector and is the most merciful, the merciful. Then when they opened the baggage, they found their merchandise returned to them. They said, Father, what could we desire? Ma nabghi. What can we desire? Or if it's for negation, we don't, of course, we don't transgress. There's no transgression or in our statements about what occurred. These are our merchandise, or this is our merchandise returned to us. We'll feed our families and take care of our brother, and we will add a camel load. This is a small amount. And so, of course, as mentioned before, the Prophet Yaqub alayhi salam, that he himself was very hesitant because, fundamentally, now they're asking them once again to allow to come with them the brother of Yusuf alayhi salam, who is said to actually resemble Yusuf and favorite Yusuf very, very much. Of course, the Prophet Yaqub was very grief-stricken for years. He cried for years over Yusuf because he wasn't certain. He didn't know what his end had been, if he had an end, if he had been killed by anyone, or what type of harm is being done to him. And of course, just imagine people whose children, unfortunately, they go missing, right? And so we see milk cartons and things like that, Amber Alerts, but you have a prophet of God. This is a prophet, right? And he himself is showing his humanity, and in one sense, the story is fundamentally about us, right? This is one of Allah's servants. And though he is special servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that you could be tested by similar things, and if you are tested by those things, then you should react in a similar fashion. In other words, not necessarily to say that you are to not feel any emotion and any sadness, right? But you should not blame Allah subhanahu and understand that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that He may want some greater good to come out of this. And as it's stated in the story, well, again, one opinion is that the time between when Yusuf salam actually was thrown out, cast down into the water hole, the well, and being reunited with his father was about 40 years, right? So it's a very long time, So one scholar actually goes as far as saying that this is the extent or the limit to which a vision will be realized. So in other words, if a person has a dream, is a righteous dream, and it predicts something to happen in the future, that it will be fulfilled no longer than 40 years, right? Of course, it's a very long time to wait because we ask Allah that He doesn't test us in the same fashion, right? So he didn't believe them, right? That he was skeptical, and he and naturally because they had done the same thing before, and they're asking him the same thing now. Okay, now you want him to take his brother as well. The only thing that actually has brought me some degree of solace, right, in that he resembles Yusuf alayhi salam physically. His features are similar to the features of Yusuf, and I keep him close to me. And he's the only child of his mother who is still alive, right? But this time, if you send them off, if I send them off with you, that this time he can't go until you swear in God's name that you will protect him, and you will not come back without him unless you're completely surrounded or completely overwhelmed, meaning either that you all usually lose your lives in the process of trying to save him and bring him back, or it means that the enemy or the individual who captures you, that you yourself lose all power to resist, and that's the only condition that you will come back to me, if you lose, of course, the possession of your brother. And so they make the promise. They swear in Allah's name, and so. But then he tells them that when you go to return this time, that you should not go through the same gate, that you should go through different gates. And then almost all the ulama, and consensus, there's a consensus almost among the ulama that the reason that he asked them to go through different doors was because he wanted to protect them from the evil eye, right? There's like one scholar or more who actually differs with that because of their own sort of theological issues. The Mu'tazili scholar Jubai had a problem with the issue of the evil eye, right? But other Mu'tazila didn't have a problem with, like Al-Basri, Abu Hussein al-Basri, and some others, right? Didn't have a problem with the evil eye. So fundamentally, almost all the Mufassirin say that he's trying to protect them from the evil eye, but at the same time, he makes it clear that even though I offer this advice, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He wants something to happen to you, is going to happen. In al-hukm illa lillah, alayhi tawakkaltu wa alayhi falyatawakkal mutawakkilun, right? So regardless of anything, that's going to be the situation. فَلَمَّا دَخَلُوا مِنْ حَيْثُ أَمَرَهُمْ أَبُوهُمْ مَا كَانَ يُغْنِي عَنْهُم مِّنَ اللَّهِ مِنْ شَيْءٍ إِلَّا حَاجَةً فِي نَفْسِ يَعْقُوبَ قَضَاهَا وَإِنَّهُ لَذُو عِلْمٍ لِمَا عَلَّمْنَاهُ وَلَكِنَّ أَكْثَرَ النَّاسِ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. That when they entered as their father had instructed them, it did not help them at all against God. It was just a need in the soul of Jacob, which he carried out. That need to give them the advice, to tell them how to tie their camels, right? But again, he did all that he can do, and you leave the rest in Allah's hand. Once you've done everything that is within your power, that is when tawakkul is set in, that you just put your trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and accept whatever decree that happens after that, right? And so, but then again, then the Quran goes on and says, that he himself has been imbued with knowledge, and as much as we taught him, right? But most people, in contrast, just do not know. They don't know what? They don't know the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has imbued him with certain knowledge. What is that knowledge of? Perhaps this knowledge of the future with respect to Yusuf and his outcome and what may occur. But the Quran doesn't give explicit mention of it, but fundamentally we say, of course, that we do know that most of the people don't know whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is speaking about here. And I think that this is where we pretty much we concluded is that this particular ayah. I think so. وَلَمَّا دَخَلُوا عَلَى يُوسُفَ آوَى إِلَيْهِ أَخَاهُ قَالَ إِنِّي أَنَا أَخُوكَ فَلَا تَبْتَئِسْ بِمَا كَانُوا يَعْمَلُونَ فَلَمَّا جَهَّزَهُم بِجَهَازِهِمْ جَعَلَ السِّقَايَةَ فِي أَخِيهِ. Right. So yeah. So once they arrive again, then I have Benjamin this second year. They're with them because that was a condition. They said if you don't bring your youngest brother, then you're not going to receive anything from me. Right. So they bring him there. Yusuf, he brings Benjamin close to him, brings him into his private quarters, or at least brings him out of earshot of his brother. And he has this conversation with him and tells him that you should not be concerned or worried about what they used to do or what they used to do in terms of their jealousy towards the two of us and our family, and the fact that our father has shown greater love towards us because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has chosen us and preferred us over them. All right. And so once again, they're leaving. So this time he dines with them and then, or at least has a lunch, and then sends them off. And they leave the city, guards are sent after them. They track them down. And then they say that one of you have stolen. They say, okay, what's missing? What's missing is the goblet or the goblet of the king's goblet. So whoever brings it to us or can ever find it, will have a reward. So as they promise that, but then it turns out they're accused of being a theft, and then it turns out that the goblet actually is found in the saddlebag of the youngest brother, Benjamin. And prior to them actually deciding what the fate of Benjamin or anyone would be before they even discover it, they asked the question, okay, well, what, according to your law, your own law, what is to happen to the individual if we discover that he is the thief, right? Or we discover the missing item with him? And so they basically tell him that جزاؤه ما وجد في رحله فهو جزاؤه كذلك نجزي الظالمين. That the recompense for it is he in whose saddlebag it is found. He is the recompense for it. Thus do we penalize wrongdoers. In other words, meaning in our town, according to our Sharia, this is what we do with wrongdoers. If an individual steals something, then he becomes the slave of the person from whom he stole for a year's time, right? That is the condition. So they rummage through, of course, everyone. They start with the oldest, and then they finally make their way to the youngest, and then discover it there, and then say, okay, he has to come back with us. So naturally they plead with him. They say, well, our father will be grief-stricken, that we made a promise to him that we will bring him back unless we are completely overwhelmed or subdued. And so basically the response is that, well, no, we can't punish an individual who's not guilty, right? Because they offered, okay, well, take one of us instead of Benjamin, because he's our most beloved to our father, and we don't want to upset him any more than he already is. So then they said, no, he has to stay with us. And then so then this is, I believe, where we concluded. وقالوا يا أيها العزيز إن له أبا شيخا كبيرا فخذ أحدنا مكانه إن نراك من المحسنين قال معاذ الله أن نأخذ إلا ما وجدنا متاعنا عنده إنا إذا لظالمون. It says, Almighty One, he has an aged father, very old. So take one of us in his place, for we see you as one who does good. He said, God forbid that we should arrest anyone but the one in whose possession we found our property, for then we would be oppressors. And then this is where we're going to begin today. فَلَمَّا اسْتَيْأَسُوا مِنْهُ خَلَصُوا نَجِيًّا قَالَ كَبِيرُهُمْ أَلَمْ تَعْلَمُوا أَنَّ أَبَاكُمْ قَدْ أَخَذَ عَلَيْكُمْ مَوْثِقًا مِنَ اللَّهِ وَمِنْ قَبْلُ مَا فَرَّطْتُمْ فِي يُوسُفَ فَلَنْ أَبْرَحَ الْأَرْضَ حَتَّى يَأْذَنَ لِي أَبِي أَوْ يَحْكُمَ اللَّهُ لِي وَهُوَ خَيْرُ الْحَاكِمِينَ. Now, when they gave up hope from him, they withdrew to confer privately. The elders among them said, do you know our father had you swear? Don't you know our father had you swear an oath by God, and how you were negligent toward Yusuf before? I will not leave this land until my father permits me, or God decides for me, and God is the best of judges. Right? So once they state asa is the root of the word itself is that yat, which means despair, right? To be despair. So estate istaf'ala form, it can be for what we call in mubalagha, for exaggerated form. So in other words, once they have given up all hope, right, from him, meaning from Yusuf, khalasu najiya, that they themselves, they withdrew najiya to confer privately. To khalasu meaning that they themselves, they withdrew themselves from the public, from other people, from outsiders, and they started a discussion among themselves. Najiya means, and is a private council or private conversation. In other words, for najwa, right? So it is to commune with one another, right, in secret. Khalasu najiya, so away from people. So naturally, they're bothered because now they're really, really afraid. They say, well, we promised our father that we would bring him back. He is not bending. He's not going to negotiate. That the Aziz is not going to negotiate his surrender. So the فقال كبيرهم, and the big one among them, ألم تعلموا أن أباكم قد أخذ عليكم موثقا من الله, ومن قبل ما فرطتم في يوسف. Right, so this is the same one, the Kabiruhum, which is either name is Rubin, right? Some say Yehuda, but the largest one, Rubin is his name, right? According to the Arabic, the Tafsir itself, right, and also the Bible, that he says basically, don't you realize what you promised your father, right? And then he reminds him, and also the fact that you've been negligent in what you did with Yusuf before this. So it said that this oldest one is the same one who told them, don't kill Yusuf, la taqtulu Yusuf. Don't kill Yusuf, but he gave him a different idea. So in other words, so he did participate in the expulsion of Yusuf, but he actually was the one who convinced them not to kill him. Right. So now he's saying, look what you did with respect to Yusuf. So in other words, when you return to your father, he's not going to believe you because you did the same thing before, right? So you took Yusuf out and you came back and he was gone. Right now it's been Yamin, and now you're going to go back and tell your father the story, and he's not going to believe you as well, right? So it says, I'm not going to go anywhere until my father permits me to do so. Or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he passes judgment in my regard. Ohu khairul hakimin, that he is the best of judges. Good places to trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whatever judgment Allah gives, that I accept that judgment. Irji'u ila abikum faqulu ya abana inna ibnaka saraqa wa ma shahidna illa bima 'allamna ma kunna lil ghaibi hafidhin. Return to your father and say, Father, your son has stolen. We only bore witness to what we knew. We could not guard against the unseen. Right? In other words, we only know what we saw. Which we saw was when they went into Binyamin's saddlebag, he pulled out the goblet of the king. It was in his saddlebag, right? And so the ulama say, tell him your son has stolen, right? And so, of course, they themselves can only judge based upon what had been stated, right, and what they saw, so they don't know for certain, but basically to tell your father, you in ibnaka saraqa, that your son has stolen, meaning he's been accused of theft. وَمَا شَهِدْنَا إِلَّا بِمَا عَلِّمْنَا, and we cannot testify. We can only testify to what we saw, what we knew, right? To what we knew, right? We didn't see him take it, but we saw them take it out of his bag. Now, of course, phrasing the wording it this way, it actually sort of leaves some room for doubt, because naturally they could say, well, the last time we were here and we got home, the coins and the goods that we were to utilize to pay for the goods that we sought, the grain itself, was put back into our saddlebags without us knowing. And that's why they said, well, ma kunna lil ghaibi hafidhin, is that we could not guard against the unseen. In other words, that we're not keepers of the unseen. We are not guardians of the unseen. And al-ghaib, is a word which means, something done out of sight of something which is indiscernible by the senses. And that's why, according to certain dialects of Arabic in that time, al-ghayb also was a synonym for the word el-layl, the nighttime. In other words, maybe, if we say that the moment that they placed the goblet in his saddlebag was at the nighttime where they were asleep, and so they wake up in the morning and now they're headed back to their village, and then, so in other words, they're basically saying, by all appearances, your son, he has stolen something, right? And so we can only tell you what we saw, right? And we can't testify to his innocence, and the difference between the time when they placed the money or the goods in our bags and this time is that they told us that, yeah, they knowingly did so, and therefore there was no harm done, right? So they returned our money. And of course, the Quran doesn't say that, but the commentaries, well, at least one interpretation of the commentaries, that that Yusuf Allah told, okay, well, yeah, we know we had my servants, my slaves, return those things to you, so no worry, no harm done. But this time there was no claim. No one claimed that they placed the goblet into Binyamin's his saddlebag, right? وَاسْأَلِ الْقَرْيَةَ الَّتِي كُنَّا فِيهَا وَالْعِيرَ الَّتِي أَقْبَلْنَا فِيهَا وَإِنَّا لَصَادِقُونَ. But this time, unlike the first time, remember when Yusuf was gone, so he returned that the wolf ate Yusuf. Here is the evidence, right? His evidence was the shirt, and the shirt had blood on it, but no tears in it. But there's no blood on it. I mean, there's blood on it. This is the evidence. So they're trying to convince their father, that what they say is true, right? So here again, the Yusuf's brother, he's gone now, and they say the Aziz has taken him into slavery, taken him as a slave, and so he said he stole. We only saw what we saw. We saw it take him out of his bag, so we can only assume that it was Binyamin who put it in his bag, But now ask, so this time, instead of them only being witnesses to what they had done, now they have others, outsiders, right? So the second time around, وَاسْأَلِ الْقَرْيَةَ الَّتِي كُنَّا فِيهَا, ask the village, ask in the city where we were, right? Or ask the village, or ask the people of the village. Of course, a village is just simply a collection of homes, but so naturally the home can't speak, but it's the people in those places or in those homes, right? And so this is a type of metaphor or figurative use here. This is majaz bin naqsan, majaz bin naqsan, we call it in Arabic, and also ask the ir, the caravan, ask the caravan that which we came. Right, so a caravan as well is nothing more than a collection of or a herd of animals, like a bunch of camels who have on their backs or carrying on them or their backs luggage or goods, right, or for people. So that's what a caravan. You can't ask the caravan. A caravan or a bunch of animals. The animal can't speak either, but rather what they meant was as, of course, the owners and the people who are attending to those caravans, So it said some of the people from their own town, from Canaan, were with them, so they returned with them. So it's okay. Well, they all saw it. They know what happened as well, right? So we're not lying to you this time, right? But again, his reaction is still the same. Yaqub's reaction is still the same. قال بل سولت لكم أنفسكم أمرا فصبر جميل عسى الله أن يأتيني بهم جميعا إنه هو العليم الحكيم. Jacob said, no, yourselves have contrived something for you, but patience is becoming. Perhaps God will bring them all to me, for God is omniscient, most wise. So it's the same thing he said to them when they came back with Yusuf's shirt, right? That no, your nafs, your souls, yourselves, your egos, they have made something easy for you. Some matter has made easy for you by your nafs. Remember, inna nafsa la'ammaratun bisu'i illa ma rahima rabbi, that the nafs, it commands one to do evil except for those to whom Allah shows mercy, right? So their nafs, their anfus, right, they have made something easy for them. فَصَبْرٌ جَمِيلٌ, right? So great patience is becoming, right? A beautiful patience, right? فَالْأَمْرُ صَبْرٌ جَمِيلٌ, the matter or the reaction is beautiful patience. And beautiful patience, as described, is patience where there is no complaint, that no one's complaining. And so Yusuf, Yaqub, alayhi salam, in this situation, of course, he'd gone through so many trials with his sons. But then he says, Asallahu iyatini bihim jami'a, right? So as if he knows something, right? So, but patience is becoming, perhaps God will bring them all to me. And so it's interesting. So he mentions them in the plural, right? So who's missing? He's missing is Binyamin's missing, and now Robil is also missing. The biggest one, the oldest son, is also there. He didn't come back, So now he has 3 missing children, right? Out of his 12 boys, 3 of them are missing. So Yusuf is gone. Maybe he's dead, maybe he's alive. But now he says maybe Allah will return all 3 of them to me, right? That because God is omniscient, he's most wise. Of course, he knows what happened to all of them. He knows what's going to happen with all of them. He knows my future, and he also Hakim, that he is wise, and he's always trying to bring out a lesson or multiple lessons from encounters and incidents and tribulations that we have in our lives. وتولى عنهم وقال يا أسف على يوسف وابيضت عيناه من الحزن فهو كظيم. Then he turned away from them and said, "Oh, how I grieve for Joseph," and his eyes became white from sorrow, and he became depressed. تولى عنهم, right? So he turned away from his sons, right? وقال يا أسف على يوسف. Yes, يا أسفي على Yusuf is one qira'ah. يا أسفي, oh my grief over Yusuf, or my grief, my sadness over Yusuf. وابيضت عيناه من الحزن, and his eyes turned white from sadness. In one reading of من الحزن, right? And hazan, as opposed to huzn, it's pretty much the same meaning, but it's slightly different. فهو كظيم, right? So they turn white from sadness, or turn white from subhanallah. Al-hazan is the opposite of a sahal, or sort of the hardship itself, or the misfortune itself that happens. فهو كظيم, and he was, in this case, he translates, he was depressed. Kazim could mean depressed. We mean that he's filled mamlu'un b'shiddat huzn, that he's filled with extreme and excessive amount of sadness. Right? Kazim also, because the word that comes on the scale of fa'il can mean the ism al-fa'il or ism maf'ul, meaning the active or active participle meaning of the word. So if it's kazim could mean kazim, meaning that he is holding back his reaction or his emotional reaction to the incidents themselves, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in one verse is وَالْكَاظِمِينَ الْغَيْظَ وَالْعَافِينَ عَنِ النَّاسِ, that those who actually restrain their rage, right? So in other words, he's restraining his rage or restraining his sadness, right? That he's holding it in, or it can mean that he's maqdum, as mentioned before, which is that it can be he's filled with either sadness, or it can be filled with rage towards his sons. Right? So his eyes turning white, according to one reading, it means that he went blind, right? That he cried so much, so cried so much, so they went blind from sadness, meaning that he cried so much that the tears themselves, they affected his vision. One reading is that, okay, he went totally blind. Another opinion is that no, that he went partially blind as a result of it, right? And so there are many scholars who actually don't like this particular viewpoint that says he went blind because they consider it to be a type of a disparaging quality in the prophet, right? For a prophet to actually go blind, although one can argue that in itself is it's not necessarily a sign of disparagement, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he tested Ayyub alayhi salam with many afflictions, physical afflictions, right? And he was still a prophet. But also because it's the verse of the Quran itself it confirms that there's something physically wrong with him. Later on we'll see, because when Yusuf sends his shirt back, that he basira, that his sight was restored, right? Or he returned to be one of basar, right? Or basira, right? However you take it, right? So he himself, despite being a prophet, we see him being overwhelmed with sadness. The Prophet ﷺ, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, also, we have reports about this when his son Ibrahim ﷺ, when he passed away, that he also cried. When the child of his daughter, she passed away, he cried as well, right? And when he cried at that time, Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas was with him because he remembered that the Prophet ﷺ, he discouraged them from showing excessive amounts of emotion, right, towards the loss of a child or any type of calamity. And he says to him, Ya Rasulullah, ma hadha, what is this? And so the Prophet ﷺ responded to him, هذه رحمة جعلها الله في قلوب عباده, that it is mercy that Allah has placed into the hearts of his servants. إنما يرحم الله من عباده الرحماء, that Allah only shows mercy to those among his servants, the ones who show mercy, right? So himself, and as another hadith that mentions, that the عين تدمع والقلب يحزن, ولا نقول إلا ما يرضي الله, that the eye may tear up, it may cry, and the heart may feel sadness, but we only see what is pleasing, only say what is pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? And the Prophet, who forbade and niyaha, to just tearing one's clothing, slapping, one's face, wailing, those type of things. All things are from the matter of Jahiliyyah. And one of the things that the Prophet ﷺ said, that his ummah is never going to give up, right? Despite the fact that it's haram, right? That he forbade them from doing it, but he said that this is an example of things that the ummah would never abandon completely, right? So what is forbidden is for one to act out, overreact, to scream loudly and go crazy, lose as if their man pulled out their hair, to tear their clothing, to start smash things, among other things like that, right? Yeah. So, but to experience sadness, there's nothing wrong with it. قالوا تالله تفتأ تذكر يوسف حتى تكون حرضا أو تكون من الهالكين. They said, by God, you won't stop remembering Joseph until you are terminally ill or have passed away. And what's interesting here is that, okay, Yamin is missing this time. Robil is also gone. But he doesn't make mention of them. He said, Ya asafa ala Yusuf. He said, oh, my grief for Yusuf. Why? Because Yusuf is the foundation of his grief. That starts with Yusuf alayhi salam. And so when a new incident happens in the person's life, then what does it do? It opens up old wounds naturally, because the first calamity is the worst. And so when you're almost beyond it, and Yamin, of course, was a source of solace for him, because, as I mentioned before, that he resembled Yusuf in so many different ways. So now even the individual who became a source of solace for him is gone. And so his sons say to him, or his grandchildren say to him, it's unclear by the surah. It sounds like his son, because they're the ones referring back to it. They return to him. Then, God, you're going to continue remembering Joseph to the extent that it will make you terminally ill. Haradan, hatta an takuna haradan. Harad or haridan, one qira'ah, hurdan in another qira'ah. Hatta takuna haradan or haridan means fundamentally that you live in a state where it is as if you're neither alive nor dead. You're not alive because you're depressed, right? You're depressed. You don't do anything. You don't move around. You're not doing anything with your life, right? But you're not dead. It's almost as if you're dead, but you're also not. You're not dead, but you're not alive either, right? So that's why I say you're going to continue this, right? In other words, it's saying, why don't you give up, right? Why don't you just get over and stop thinking about Yusuf? It's not likely that you'll see him again in the future. Or you will have passed away. In other words, you will die, right? So either this constant reminders of Yusuf alayhi salam, or constantly recalling Yusuf alayhi salam, it's going to lead you into deeper depression, or it's going to kill you physically physically kill you. And of course, they're concerned with their dad. They don't want their dad to pass away. قال إنما أشكو بثي وحزني إلى الله وأعلم من الله ما لا تعلمون. He said, I only complain of my sorrow and grief to God. I mean, you may hear me speaking, and you may hear me say the things that I say, but I'm not saying these things to you all. I'm not saying these things to you for a response, that I'm actually appealing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I'm in a state where I am completely aware of my Lord right now. My Lord is with me, right? So I'm pleading, I'm making a plea to him, So he says, I'm complaining of my sorrow and grief to God, and I know from God what you do not know, right? In other words, there must have been a sign in this, right? Must have been a sign that Binyamin and Robil are no longer there, that the Prophet Yusuf salam now connects it with something that he knows about Yusuf salam returning in the future, returning in the future, right? So إنما أشكو بثي وحزني إلى الله. Bethi is beth is betha means to sort of is tafriq. It is to scatter something around, to make something spread. In other words, they said a beth is when an individual's their sadness builds up in them to the extent that they can no longer contain themselves. So once you let it out, we call that beth. إنما أشكو بثي وحزني إلى الله. That I'm not complaining to you, I'm complaining to Allah only, right? And actually, in the books of Tafsir, there's mention of a story of a claim that the reason that Yaqub alayhi salam he now responds this way is because he had learned in a lesson from earlier in his life after the disappearance of Yusuf alayhi salam, because he said he became very frail because he wasn't eating. He was looking older than he actually was, according to his age. And then a visitor passed by him, and he said, what's happened to you? Why do you look this way? And so he said, I look this way because of a long life and many sources of sadness. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends the angel Gabriel to Yaqub alayhi salam at that moment and said, are you complaining about me to the creation? Are you complaining about me to the creation? Of course, and automatically, immediately, Yaqub, he says, Ya Rab, khati'atan akhta'tuha faghfir laha li. So this is a sin I've committed. Forgive me for that sin. Right? Allahu a'lam if it's really happened, but this is mentioned in Tafsir. So, but now he said, no, my shikawa, my shakwa, ila Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not to you. Don't mistake what you have just witnessed. I'm not appealing to you. I'm appealing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. قال إنما أشكو بثي وحزني إلى الله وأعلم من الله ما لا تعلمون. And I know things that you don't know, right? The thing you just don't understand. Yeah, I know. And this is, he know that the relief is coming soon. Relief is coming soon. So this is why he says next. He says, يا بني يذهبوا فتحسسوا من يوسف وأخيه ولا تيأسوا من روح الله إنه لا ييأس من روح الله إلا قوم الكافرون. So my sons, go inquire after Joseph and his brother, and do not despair of the mercy of God, for no one despairs of the mercy of God except people who are atheists. And so, يا بني يذهبوا فتحسسوا ومن قراءة فتجسسوا من يوسف وأخيه. So he tells them, go and inquire, look for news of Joseph and of his brother. And of course, his brother in this case, Yamin, not the Kabirahum, the Robil, right? But he's concerned with these. So he's concerned with all of them, but he already mentioned that may Allah he's going to bring all of them back. But he in particular, search for news or look for signs of Yusuf and his brother. وَلَا تَيْأَسُوا مِنْ رَوْحِ اللَّهِ. Do not despair of Allah's mercy, of Allah's ruh, min ruhillah. And the ruh, of course, is connected with rih. Rih is, of course, the wind. Ruh is the spirit. Ruh is the experience that one has, or the delight that one experiences, like when you have a gentle wind come your way. Say it's a hot day outside, and then you get a breeze that comes your way. Do not despair from Allah's ruh, from his mercy, meaning Allah's fadl or Allah's rahmah, according to different exegetes. And then he says, إِنَّهُ لَا يَيْأَسُ مِنْ رَوْحِ اللَّهِ إِلَّا قَوْمُ الْكَافِرُونَ, because only atheists, they despair from Allah's ruh, right? And it's interesting. So Thomas Cleary, he translates kafirun as atheist throughout his translation, which is really interesting because fundamentally, like an atheist is not necessarily an individual who does not believe in the existence of a creator, right? Because there's a difference between an atheist and a theist, right? So the A in theist is a negation, right? So an atheist. So if you're a theist, you not only believe that God exists, you also believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually, he intervenes in human affairs, that he is a personal God, right? A deist, for instance, believes that God exists, but God does not intervene in our personal lives. In other words, he just created everything, he set everything in motion, and then he took a step back and hands off, right? Things are just going to work according to the laws he created on their own volition, right? But a theist is an individual who believes that not only God exists and created everything, but also he intervenes in human affairs. Excuse me. So you have a monotheist and then you have the polytheist. We were a monotheist. We believe that our God is only one, and that God is our creator, he's our provider, the giver of life to death, etc. And he also will intervene in human affairs, right? That he's a personal God. When I appeal to him, he listens to me, he hears me, he listens to me, and answers my prayers, right? An atheist does not believe that God intervenes in human affairs, even if that person might believe in the existence of a creator, right? Of course, that sounds strange because generally we hear atheists, we think about an individual who doubts or just totally rejects the possibility that a creator exists, right? They all happen by chance, right? But the kafir is an individual who knows that it's true, that that they're all, by all logic and all of the natural signs indicate the existence of a creator, something that initiated, the first mover, right? Whatever you want to call it, right? Brought everything into existence. But kafara, meaning that he covers it up, that he's ingrate, he conceals that knowledge or rejects the existence of that thing, tries to hide it from himself first and foremost, but then from others as well. That he knows it to be true by his fitrah, knows it to be true. He knows it by aql, knows it to be true, right? There's something there, right? So only a kafir would despair from Allah's mercy, or despair from Allah's bounty, despair from Allah's ruh, from his comfort that come, right? And this is actually reiterated in a text like the Aqidah of Imam al-Tahawi, when he mentions al-amnu wal-ya'su yanqulani an al-millah wa sabil al-haqqi bainahuma li ahli al-qibla, that despair or security and despair, or presumption and despair, both expels one beyond the fold, and the path of truth is between the two for the people who pray to the qibla of the Muslims, right? So in other words, you can actually, if you believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not and cannot forgive you for your sins, then that is kufr. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he will punish you in hell, with hell forever, because you believe that he won't forgive you, that there's some sin that he won't forgive, right? So it's really interesting. It's sort of it's paradoxical, right? So this idea that you could be damned to hell forever. Why are you in hell? Because I didn't believe Allah was gonna. I didn't believe that Allah could or would forgive me for my sins, right? So it's called yet. You totally give up hope, right? So basically, he tells them, look out for signs for Yusuf and his brother. فَلَمَّا دَخَلُوا عَلَيْهِ قَالُوا يَا أَيُّهَا الْعَزِيزُ مَسَّنَا وَأَهْلَنَا الضُّرُّ وَجِئْنَا بِبِضَاعَةٍ مُزْجَاةٍ فَأَوْفِ لَنَا الْكَيْلَ وَتَصَدَّقْ عَلَيْنَا إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَجْزِي الْمُتَصَدِّقِينَ. Then when they entered his presence, they said, Mighty One, adversity has befallen us and our family, and we have brought little merchandise. So give us full measure and be charitable to us, for God rewards the charitable. So again, so their father tells them that, okay, you go there, look out for Yusuf, look for signs for Yusuf, ask about Yusuf, right? But what they do is they don't directly ask, right? So they come, they tell them, okay, well, our family, we and our family, we've been afflicted by harm. Harm is afflicted us. So again, they're coming to get more grain. And we have brought bida'a muzjat. We brought goods that are muzjat, which you say a small amount of goods. Muzjat, right? From azja, yuzji, which fundamentally can be translated either as a small amount of goods, or it can be low quality goods, which is also one of these potential meanings as well. Bida'at muzjat, or in other words, a type of goods which cannot or insufficient amount to balance out, or to which is equal to the quality of whatever goods you're going to give to us. So we want a camel load of grain. We don't have enough for that. We don't have enough of what we are seeking. So give us full measure, right? Give a full ofi and kayla lana, right? So give us a full amount despite the existence of this bida'a masjad. And one narration says that, well, the bida'a masjad were coins. The coins that they had were of very low quality, right? That they weren't pure silver, or they were very old and beaten out of shape and compared to what they were given, Allah knows best, but they didn't have an equal thing to barter with, right? In this case, so they asked him to give full measure, وَتَصَدَّقْ عَلَيْنَا, and then also to be charitable towards him. إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَجْزِي الْمُتَصَدِّقِينَ, because Allah, He rewards the charitable, right? And so on this point about them asking for charity, there are those who say among the Mufassirin that it's interesting that they're asking for charity when they are Ahlul Bayt, right? So the sadaqah, usually sadaqah is zakat, right? So we say that the Ahlul Bayt are not eligible for zakat, even if they happen to be poor, right? And so if we say this ruling extends to the past as well, right, then they themselves would not be eligible for zakat. So how could they ask for charity? Some respond to that particular objection by saying, they go, well, what they mean when they say be charitable is not that they want him to give them more for less, but what they're actually basically saying is that, well, we want you to be charitable towards us by returning our brother to us. And that's one reading of it, right? And of course, another reading of it, which is in context with the verse, is that because we don't have a sufficient amount of goods to trade with you, then you should give us full measure, because that in itself will be an act of charity on your part, and Allah, He gives reward for those who are charitable. Wallahu a'lam. قال هل علمتم ما فعلتم بيوسف وأخيه إذ أنتم جاهلون. Then finally he reveals, so he's going to reveal himself. He said, do you know what you did to Joseph and his brother while you were ignorant? وأنتم جاهلون, so jahilun, when you were ignorant, right? So when you were young, when you were not people of restraint. قالوا أئنك لأنت يوسف قال أنا يوسف وهذا أخي قد من الله علينا إنه من يتقي ويصبر فإن الله لا يضيع أجر المحسنين. They said, are you Joseph? He said, I am Joseph, and this is my brother. God has been gracious to us, for if anyone is conscientious and patient, God does not neglect the reward of those who do good. Right, so قالوا أئنك لأنت يوسف, right? So in this qira'ah, they're asking the question, are you Yusuf? Right, because now, of course, they're expecting to find Yusuf, because their father tells them فَتَحَسَّسُوا مِن يُوسُفَ وَأَخِيهِ, that you should inquire or look, make a search for signs of physical signs of Yusuf. One qira'ah is that, are you asking that? Another reading is that they actually say that you are innaka la anta Yusuf, you are Yusuf, right? Innaka la anta Yusuf, you're Yusuf, right? You're the one, right? So they're telling him that who he is, and they say qala ana Yusuf wa hada akhi, and this is my brother, qamanallahu alayna, right? And then a lesson: those people, if you're a person of taqwa and a person of sabr together, then Allah, He will not neglect the reward of those who do good, because the people who do good are the people of taqwa and people of sabr. right? And that's fundamentally what we see, is that Yusuf was a person of taqwa, right? In that he resisted the advances of his mistress, that he was patient, and he spent years in prison because of his refusal to agree to resist, or to give in to her advances, right? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he gives man for them, because they both Yusuf and Yamin have these characteristics. They are people of taqwa and people of sabr. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not going to allow or neglect the reward of those who do good. And so he's telling them too, that if you do good, if you have taqwa and you are patient, then Allah will do similar things to you. قالوا تالله لقد آثرك الله علينا وإن كنا لخاطئين. They said, by God has preferred you over us, and behold, we are the sinners, right? So finally, of course, tallahi, remember, tallah, billah, wallahi, lita'ajjub, tallahi, lita'ajjub, so it's like you're swearing by God, so it's like an amazement that they themselves are so amazed that Allah, He has preferred you over us, and we were the wrongdoers, we were the sinners, we are the sinners, right? So He preferred you, you're not sinful, you are the muhsineen, we are the khati'een. But then He says, to reveal even more what makes Him better than them, قال لا تثريب عليكم اليوم يغفر الله لكم وهو أرحم الراحمين. He said, there is no blame on you today. God forgives you, and God is most merciful, as the most merciful of the merciful. Right? لا تثريب عليكم اليوم. There's no reminder. Tathrib, there's no reminder of your misdeeds today. That may Allah forgive you. يغفر الله لكم. Allah, right, forgives you, or Allah will forgive you. وهو أرحم الراحمين. Later we're going to see they asked their father as well to ask Allah to forgive them. اذهبوا بقميصي هذا فألقوه على وجه أبي يأتي بصيرا وأتوني بأهلكم أجمعين ولما فصلت العير قال أبوهم إني لأجد ريح يوسف لولا أن تفندون. So again, take this shirt of mine and present it to my father in person. He will recover his sight. So here, again, the qamis. So we saw the qamis, the shirt of Yusuf, at the beginning when they brought it back to their father, right? As sign that Yusuf had been eaten by the wolf, which was a lie. Then we see Yusuf's qamis torn by the wife of the Aziz when he's trying to get away from her. And that in itself was a sign of his innocence, right? And now the qamis, once again, is being sent to his father, right? And what is going to happen? A miracle is going to happen because their father has gone blind, right? Again, according to this reading, and what is apparent to me from the verse itself, even though, of course, there are many scholars who don't like this particular reading because of ideological reasons, that is cast upon the face of my father. Yati basira. The face of my father. Yati basira. If you do so, he will come or become one who has basar. Once again, وَأْتُونِي بِأَهْلِكُمْ أَجْمَعِينَ, and bring all of your family, all of your family, complete all the family. وَلَمَّا فَصَلَتِ الْعِيرُ قَالَ أَبُوهُمْ إِنِّي لَأَجِدُ رِيحَ يُوسُفَ. And then when the caravan departed, their father said, I'd be sure I got a scent of Joseph, if you don't think me senile. رِيحَ يُوسُفَ لَوْلَا أَن تُفَنِّدُونِ. Right. So in other words, again, he has a miracle too, right? He sends his shirt with his brothers to his father. They set out, and at that time they set out, their father, he himself smells the scent of Yusuf, his brother. His son, his long lost son. قالوا تالله إنك لفي ضلالك القديم. Right. So again, they return to this. Again, their dad is old and he's senile, he's decrepit once again. They said, you are surely in your old era, right? So your old era because of your old age, that you're in your old era. فَلَمَّا أَنْ جَاءَ الْبَشِيرُ أَلْقَاهُ عَلَى وَجْهِهِ فَارْتَدَّ بَصِيرًا قَالَ أَلَمْ أَقُلْ لَكُمْ إِنِّي أَعْلَمُ مِنَ اللَّهِ مَا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. So in other words, they doubt their father. They think that their father is raving, that he's senile, right? But he, of course, is seeing a reality they're not able to see. Then when the bearer of good news came, he presented the shirt to him, whereupon he regained his sight. He said, did I not tell you that I know from God what you don't know? Think about, I mean, this is sort of reminded, it takes us back to the story of Adam alayhi salam as well. Can you remember the angels? They were, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, inni ja'ilun fil ardi khalifa. And so their response, قالوا أتجعل فيها من يفسد فيها ويسفك الدماء ونحن نسبح بحمدك ونقدس لك قال إني أعلم ما لا تعلمون. Right? So that you're going to create someone who's going to shed blood and spread corruption in the earth while we continue to celebrate your glory, glorify you, and celebrate your praises. And then Allah's response, I know something you don't know. Of course, Allah knows everything, right? Here, but Yaqub, of course, is not, of course, an analogy with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but similar response, that a superior to an inferior say, well, I know some things you don't know. And this is a reality too, is that, experience sometimes special knowledge or gifts that are given to certain people that others not given. Those individuals are able to perceive and to see certain things that others or the inexperienced person or the ignorant person can see. So respect, at least patience at least for the individual with the greater wisdom and the greater longer life, especially again, just we're told to respect our elders naturally, right? But once the news comes, that he returned sightful, or a person with sight. I know from God what you don't know. So once again, they're repenting. They said, Father, ask forgiveness for us for our sins, for we were in the wrong. He said, I will ask forgiveness for you of my Lord, the most forgiving, the most merciful. So Yusuf says, يَغْفِرُ اللَّهُ لَكُمْ وَهُوَ أَرْحَمُ الرَّاحِمِينَ. Yusuf says to them, don't worry about it. I'm not going to scold you for your misdeeds, right, today. Right? No, Allah, I forgive you. Allah will forgive you, inshallah, or Allah does forgive you, or Allah will forgive you, because both, we read both ways. But the response to their father is, I will ask forgiveness for you, ask forgiveness from my Lord for you, right? Which is really interesting. We utilize the word sofa. Sofa is harf, usually it's for the future, istiqbal al-ba'id, right? For the remote future, right? As opposed to near future. Astaghfiru lakum rabbi, I will ask my Lord to forgive you. And it said in the Tafsir that the reason he actually said, I will in the future ask forgiveness for you, was because he was planning to wait to the opportune time, or the best time of the day, to ask Allah's forgiveness, and which is said to be the time it was called Sahar, or the time of Suhoor. And so we're all fasting Ramadan, and the time prior to prior to dawn, when Fajr comes in, is considered to be one of the best times of the 24-hour day for us to pray, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as that famous hadith mentions, in that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he descends to the lowest heaven at the last third of the night. And there are many narrations of the same hadiths. One hadith says at the first third, one says the second third, and there's some narrations that say in the last third of the night. And he said, Man yas'aluni fa'u'tiya lah, that who is asking for me. Man yad'uni fa'astajiba lah, that who is asking, making, supplicating me so that I may answer their prayers. The man who is asking for me for something so that I may give it to them. وَمَنْ يَسْتَغْفِرُ لِي فَأَغْفِرَ لَهُ, who is asking forgiveness from me so that I may forgive that person. Right? So he wanted to wait, according to the Tafsir, for the best time of the day, because he wanted his sons to be forgiven by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They've done great injustice towards him and towards his son Yusuf alayhi salam, and perhaps even Yamin. And so the Quran says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu inna min azwajikum wa auladikum aduwwun lakum fahdharuhum. O you who believe, verily among your children and your spouses, there's an enemy. There's an enemy for you among your spouses and even your children, right? But then it goes on and says, "Wa in ta'fu wa tasfahu wa taghfiru fa inna Allaha ghafurur rahim." But if you forgive, you pardon, and you overlook, then Allah, He is forgiving, merciful. إِنَّمَا أَمْوَالُكُمْ وَأَوْلَادُكُمْ فِتْنَةٌ وَاللَّهُ عِنْدَهُ أَجْرٌ عَظِيمٌ. And your wealth and your children are nothing more than a trial. And with Allah, there is an enormous reward, right? So that's what the Quran teaches us. And so this is part of what we're learning here, the demonstration of his wealth, is that Yaqub alayhi salam, of course, he was angry with his sons, but of course he didn't hate his sons. These were from his own loin, and he still had to pray for them. He said, I'm going to ask Allah's forgiveness for you. فَلَمَّا دَخَلُوا عَلَى يُوسُفَ آوَى إِلَيْهِ أَبَوَيْهِ وَقَالَ ادْخُلُوا مِصْرَ إِنْ شَاءَ اللَّهُ آمِنِينَ. Then when they entered the presence of Joseph, he lodged his parents and said, enter Egypt secure. It is God's will. If it is God's will. دَخَلُوا عَلَى يُوسُفَ آوَى إِلَيْهِ أَبَوَيْهِ. So he granted refuge to himself, to his parents. He brought them in and granted both of them refuge. And he said, "Udkhulu Misra, insha'Allah aminin," being secure, being safe from what? Being safe from the qahad, safe from the famine, of al-atash, and the thirst, the drought, being safe from starvation, from the Youre, right? So fundamentally, that's so when his parents are there, and then he said, وَرَفَعَ أَبَوَيْهِ عَلَى الْعَرْشِ وَخَرُّوا لَهُ سُجَّدًا وَقَالَ يَا أَبَتِ هَذَا تَأْوِيلُ رُؤْيَايَ مِنْ قَبْلُ قَدْ جَعَلَهَا رَبِّي حَقًّا. And he elevated his parents on the throne, and they fell down prostrate before him. And he said, Father, this is the explanation of my dream before. My Lord has made it real and has been good to me. Right? So now, you remember at the beginning of the story, so I had a dream, he had a vision. That I saw 11 stars, and I saw the sun and the moon all prostrating to me. Right? So he elevates his parents up onto his throne, and they fell prostrate before him. They prostrated before him. So it said that this was permissible in the Sharia, in their Sharia, but in our Sharia, it became impermissible to prostrate to another person. And we know the hadith about the issue of prostration. Salman al-Farisi came to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He was a very new Muslim, and he came to the Prophet. He saw the Prophet walking on the road one day, and he fell down before the Prophet, prostrating. And the Prophet told him not to prostrate for him. La tasjud ilayya, right? Do not, ya Salman, don't prostrate to me, right? And there, of course, there's another hadith similar to this. Another Sahabi prostrates to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he also forbids him from doing so. But it wasn't. In other words, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us to do an act which we today consider to be shirk, it would not be shirk because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's ordered it, right? And so think about this with regard to the angels, right? So and when we said to the angels, prostrate to Adam, and they all prostrated with the exception of Iblis, right? So here, the act of prostration is done for Allah's sake, or it is done with the right understanding that the Creator is the one I'm prostrating for. I may be prostrating to you, but I'm prostrating for the Creator because He ordered me to prostrate. I'm not doing it because I'm worshiping you. I'm worshiping Creator. I'm obeying the commandment of the Creator. So it's not shirk. So, but again, during the Sharia, the final dispensation, the final moral code revealed to humanity, it was outlawed. This is not permissible for you to prostrate to anyone or anything other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? So this is the explanation or the ta'wil of my dream from before. Right? And so ta'wil, right? What the matter returns back to, right? That this is its explanation. This is its manifestation in my life. My Lord has made it real. He has made it true. وَقَدْ أَحْسَنَ بِي إِذْ أَخْرَجَنِي مِنَ السِّجْنِ وَجَاءَ بِكُم مِنَ الْبَدْوِ مِنْ بَعْدِ أَنْ نَزَغَ الشَّيْطَانُ بَيْنِي وَبَيْنَ أَخْوَتِي إِنَّ رَبِّي لَطِيفٌ لِمَا يَشَاءُ إِنَّهُ هُوَ الْعَلِيمُ الْحَكِيمُ. And so So he says, Father, this is explanation of my dream before. My Lord has made it real and has been good to me, getting me out of prison and bringing you from the desert after Satan had alienated me and my brothers. Truly, truly, my Lord is subtle in design, being the all-knowing one, completely wise. In other words, so now he's happy. The family's reunited. There's a happy end happening to the story. But Yusuf himself, of course, instead of complaining about everything that happened to him, he's looking at the good that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has done for him. He's not focusing on the bad and all of the mistreatments, the misfortunes that happened in his life, but understanding that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he was ghalibun ala amrihi, that Allah, he was in control of his affair, that he focuses on the good, the outcomes of it all. That ahsana bi id akhrajani min sijni. So he did good to me when he brought me out of the prison, right? وَجَاءَ بِكُم مِّنَ الْبَدْوِ, and he also brought you from the desert, from the land of the Bedouins. And that is after Shaitan himself, he incited or caused alienation between me and between my brothers. And so, Inna Rabbi Latif, that Allah, he's subtle in design. He's Latif in the way that Lima Yasha, right? Being subtle in design, being the all-knowing, completely wise, right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he is Latif for whatever he pleases. In other words, the way that he works with the human being, it goes undetected, that we don't fully understand the wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala quite often when he works with us. We don't know what his ultimate goal is with us when he intervenes in our lives and he tells us, or he brings things or experiences, misfortunes even upon our lives. Innahu huwa al-alim al-hakim. He is the all-knowing one. He is the most wise. Rabbi, and then he makes the prayer, Rabbi qad ataytani min al-mulki wa 'allamtani min ta'wil al-ahadithi fatir as-samawati wal-ard anta waliyyi fi ad-dunya wal-akhirah tawaffani muslima wa alhiqni bis-salihin. My Lord, you gave me some authority and taught me some interpretation of dreams, creator of the heavens and the earth. You are my protector in the world and in the hereafter. Take my soul in a state of acquiescence and unite me with the upright. And so, a beautiful translation too, as well. So again, he ends with this prayer. He's being grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, expresses his gratitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, despite everything that happened, because he sees the reward itself. That the final outcome is better than the start of the situation, right? There's one way you can read that, is that so the outcome of the aqiba lil muttaqin. So he's now Aziz. So Allah has given me authority, power in the land. So my family's starving, but I have control over all of the food, right, that's available right now. That you taught me the ta'wil of hadith as well, gave me knowledge of the unseen, a special type of skill. Fatir as-samawati anta waliyyi fi dunya. You are my ally, you're my friend, right? You're my protector in this world and the hereafter, right? Because your friend always works in your best interest. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has worked in the best interest of Yusuf alayhi salam and the best interest of Yaqub and the brothers of Yaqub. And he works in our best interest too. He works in our best interest too. So we need to keep that in mind always, at all times, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, although at times it may feel like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that he's paying us no attention, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is fully attentive to our needs and to the things that will make our lives better for us, and especially if that life leads to a good end. Wa akhiratu tawaffani muslima. So die and take my soul as a Muslim, alhiqni bis-salihin, and join me, reunite me with those people who are righteous. I want to be with the righteous people in the hereafter. I want to be with the unrighteous people in the hereafter. I want to die in the state of Islam. So at any rate, so I think that's a good place to stop for today. Inshallah, tomorrow we'll take off. We'll continue from this particular point, and hopefully we have you rejoin us again. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that he bless you, that he protect you, that he grant you the blessing of the night of power during these concluding days of the month of Ramadan. Alhamdulillah, we've passed the halfway mark, and it is a time to do as much as we can to guarantee as much as possible, Allah's forgiveness is pardon. Try to limit our distractions. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept your charity, your prayers, your fast, your reading, recitation of the Quran, and all of your goodwill during these final days. Wa sallallahu sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam tasliman kathira. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh.